This old man looks so happy and contented. Let's ask him why. Sir, why do you look so happy and cool?
Amazon it is.
Because someone sent you a book from Amazon.
No, it's because I apply Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' regret minimizing framework.
How so?
Watch this video.
I went to my boss and said to him, you know, I'm going to go do this crazy thing, and I'm going to start this this company selling books online. And this is something that I had already been talking to him about in a sort of more general context. But then he said, let's go on a walk. And we went on a 2-hour walk in Central Park in New York City. And the conclusion of that was this, he said, you know, this actually sounds like a really good idea to me. But it sounds like it would be a better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And he convinced me to think about it for 48 hours before making a final decision. And so I went away and was trying to find the right framework in which to make that kind of big decision. And, you know, I'd already talked to my wife about this, and she was very supportive and said, look, you know, you can count me in 100%. Whatever you want to do. You know, it's true. She had married this kind of, you know, fairly stable guy in a stable career path, and now he wanted to go do this crazy thing, but she was 100% supportive. So it really was a decision that I had to make for myself. And the framework I found, which made the decision incredibly easy, was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And you know, I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret having wanted, you know, trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day. And so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision. And I think that's a very good, it's if you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. You know, I left this Wall Street firm in the middle of the year. When you do that, you walk away from your annual bonus. And that's the kind of thing that in the short term can confuse you. But if you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later. Came across the fact, so this is 1994, nobody has heard of the internet, very, very few people. And I came across the fact that the web, World Wide Web, was growing at something like 2,300% a year. This is in 1994, and anything growing that fast is, even if its baseline usage today is tiny, it's growing so fast, it's gonna be big. And so I looked at that and I was like, there's gotta be, I should come up with a business idea and that get, you know, on the internet, and then let the internet grow around this, and we can keep working on it. And so I made a list of products that I might sell online, and I started force ranking them. And I picked books because books is super unusual in one respect, which is that there are more book items in the book category than there are items in any other category. There are 3 million different books active and in print around the world at any given time. So the founding idea of Amazon was to build universal selection of books. The biggest bookstores only had 150,000 titles. And so that's what I did. And I hired a small team, and we built the software. I moved to Seattle.
And when you told your parents you were going to quit D.E. Shaw, where you're successful, making presumably a fair amount of money,
yeah.
And you told your wife, Mackenzie, that you're going to move across the country, what did they all say?
They were immediately and reflexively supportive right after they asked the question, what's the internet?
Right.
And so, no, but this is right. With your loved ones, you bet on them. You're not betting on the idea. You are betting on the person. And that was and it's one of those decisions I made with my heart and not my head. And I basically said, I don't want to regret. When I'm 80, now 90, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have in my life. And most of our regrets are acts of omission. They're things we didn't try. It's the path untraveled. Those are the things that haunt us.
I was in 2001 or two on a plane riding out to one of these conferences that occasionally I go to. And I said, will Amazon make it? And this very smart, but not quite too smart, investment banker said to me, who was the CEO of a firm, said, no, they won't make it. You made it. Was there a moment you thought, I might not make it?
The riskiest moment for Amazon, Charlie, was at the very, very beginning. I needed to raise $1 million at a certain point. And I ended up giving away 20% of the company for $1 million.
A hell of a deal for somebody.
A lot of people did very well on that deal. But they also took a risk, so they deserved to do very well on that deal. But I had to take 60 meetings to raise $1 million, and I raised it from 22 people at approximately $50,000 a person. And it was nip and tuck whether I was going to be able to raise that money. So the whole thing could have ended before it even started. That was 1995, and the first question every investor asked me was, what's the internet?
I mean, you can afford a better desk than that.
It's a symbol of spending money on things that matter to customers and not spending money on things that don't.
This man is a titan of our time, a giant.
What kind of kid were you?
Well, I was a good student. I always worked really hard. I was nerdy.
You were nerdy.
I was nerdy. That hasn't changed, by the way.
Did you realize it back then?
My watch updates itself from the atomic clock 36 times a day, if that gives you any indication.
Really?
I'm afraid so.
But you did really well, huh?
In school?
Yeah,
I was always a good student.
Bezos went to a Montessori school when he was 3. By 3rd grade, teachers knew he was gifted. A year later, he started playing with computers. In high school, he was valedictorian of his graduating class.
Socially?
Socially, I was a little awkward, I think would be one way to put it.
Blind dates?
Not until, I didn't really date much until like my last year of college.
Which was where?
Which was at Princeton. Actually, I set up sort of a formal plan to date. I had all my friends set me up on blind dates. None of them worked out very well.
Maybe it was his intensity, or maybe it was the way he talks. Listen to the way he describes his company's business plan.
We believe that this is a critical category formation time.
Bezos uses the same kind of Wall Street wonk talk when he talks or thinks about almost anything, including what he wants out of life.
The way I made the decision to leave Wall Street and do this was, it'll sound geeky to you, but it was a regret minimization framework. So this is how I actually made the decision.
If I understand it, if I can translate that into English I can deal with, does that mean I want to live my life so that in a few decades from now I'm not going to regret it?
That's exactly right. I want to have lived my life in such a way that when I'm 80 years old, I've minimized the number of regrets that I have. And I think actually a lot of people do that. I think they, even if they don't, call it something as dorky as regret minimization framework, they behave that way anyway. They think that way.
But for you, it was not carpe diem. It was not wine, women, and song.
No. I don't go in for carpe diem. I go in for regret minimization framework. Absolutely.
And I told my boss I was going to go do this thing, start an internet bookstore, and my wife I'd already told my wife, and she's like, "Great, let's go." And I said to my boss I was going to do this. He's like, "This is a good idea." He said, "I think this is a good idea, but it would be an even better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job." And that sort of made some logical sense to me, and he convinced me to think about it for a couple of days. So I went away, and I was really trying to get my head around how to think about this. And I think, for me, the right way to make that kind of very personal decision, because those decisions are personal, they're not like data-driven business decisions. They are, what does your heart say? And for me, the best way to think about it was to project myself forward to age 80 and say, look, when I'm 80 years old, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have. I don't want to be 80 years old in a quiet moment of reflection, thinking back over my life and cataloging a bunch of major regrets. And I think that regrets, our biggest regrets, in most cases, you can murder somebody, okay, you'd regret that. But in most cases, our biggest regrets turn out to be acts of omission. It's paths not taken, and they haunt us. We wonder, what would have happened I loved that person and I never told them. And then they married somebody else. I didn't do this. And so that's the frame of mind that I put myself in. And once I did that, once I thought about it that way, it was immediately obvious to me. I knew that when I'm 80, I would never regret trying this thing that I was super excited about and it failing. If it failed, fine. I would be very proud of the fact when I'm 80 that I tried. And I also knew that it would always haunt me if I didn't try. And so that would be a regret. It would be a 100% chance of a regret if I didn't try, and basically a 0% chance of regret if I tried and failed. So I think that's a useful metric for any important life decision.